Good morning, UFL fans. I had to open an X up this morning, Pro Football Newsroom, all the UFL news sites, just to make sure what I recorded and reported last night was not a dream. And sure enough, obviously it was not, because it was just so groundbreaking and crazy. Now, it's been roughly not even 12 hours since I posted the two videos I posted, but I wanted to go ahead. There's more information coming out from James Larsen as to why the UFL has decided to move on from the 4 locations. A lot more information is making more sense now with the layoffs that were reported, over the last couple weeks. But I do want to pinpoint on something very interesting and kind of hilarious in my opinion. So Mike Mitchell and numerous other sources, including myself, who reached out to someone in Arlington that I know pretty close, has all kind of put out the same message or response, asking for some kind of quotation or something with the situation going forward. But Mike Mitchell is reporting spokesperson for the UFL has reached out to release a statement on the story first reported by Mark Perry at UFL News Hub. And James Larsen also reported. We can argue of who reported it first. Who cares? Either way, the information's out there from pretty much every single source that does UFL news, essentially. But the statement the league put out is absolutely hilarious. The league office is in the planning stages for next season and beyond. At this point, we have nothing to report on any unauthorized speculation. Like, the wording of unauthorized speculation is got to be the worst statement that you could put out there, because it just does not make sense. What do you mean unauthorized speculation? If I had a media credential, or people have media credentials with the UFL, whatever the case may be, there isn't ever a time where speculation is unauthorized. Like, that's part of journalism that happens across every single realm of sports, especially on YouTube, especially on X or different media platforms. Most things that are reported in news are speculation. They never have to be authorized by an organization to be speculated on. It's a very weird tone of how they said that, but I just thought it was kind of funny, and it just even more so, in my opinion, it kind of reigns what the UFL essentially does, and how when they put these bogus things out, they don't want to release stuff, and they put these words out there, it just means it's true. Because here's the thing, this was something that I dealt with prior to the XFL USFL merger. When the rumors came out about the merger, these were the kind of same information I was getting from the XFL, is that no, none of this is true. It's all just speculation. The leagues are not merging. They haven't even talked. And regardless if the employee knew or not, which I then found out after the fact that the employee did know, that I talked to, that knew about the merger all along. They were part of the front office and was part of it, but obviously they couldn't comment on it. So it was very interesting. It's the same kind of scenario they're putting out now, and I find it kind of hilarious that they shouldn't have even made a statement. They should have said they're not even commenting and left it at that, and not put unauthorized speculation. Very weird. Anyways, moving back to James Larsen's Pro Football Newsroom's article on just why the UFL essentially is abandoning 4 markets and breaking that all down, which brings out some clear-cut points. On Tuesday evening, we broke, this is James Larsen, on Tuesday evening, we broke some rather wild UFL news. The league is moving away from 4 of their markets from the past 2 seasons. All 4 teams were part of the USFL conference, which is disintegrating as we head towards 2026. The following 4 franchises will be located in 2026: Birmingham Stallions, Houston Roughnecks, Memphis Showboats, Michigan Panthers, as we reported. last night. It's a move that certainly shows that the UFL is heading into desperation mode with season 3 on the way. Let's face it, it's no secret that the league saw a decline in average attendance and TV ratings in 2025, two of their main drivers for potential success. With a crucial season 3 ahead, one that will make or break the future of the UFL, severe changes are being made. As we reported late last week, there has been a mass exodus of layoffs and firings in the UFL. The majority of those releases were front office members in the 4 markets being canned. Houston and Birmingham are completely barren. Nobody works for any of those teams in the front office. And quite frankly, I don't think even like there's anyone on staff, whether it's like Skip Holtz or like coaching staff or anything like that, that essentially is under contract right now either. All those contracts, I believe, expired at the 1st of July, and they are being paid on appearance, which surprisingly enough, Birmingham has a youth event today. I think we talked a little bit about last night. That's at Legion Stadium today, which kind of is an eye-opener why they're not at Protective Stadium. And we'll talk about that here in this article or whatnot. But Memphis and Michigan were down to 1 member apiece as of Monday morning. Of course, nothing has been made official by the UFL quite yet. But for now, let's take a look at what went into the decisions behind each market being moved. Birmingham Stallions starting out with, start with the obvious. Many are shocked by the move of the Birmingham Stallions, the gold standard for spring football. Stallions had won 3 straight championships prior to this year and still made a postseason run during the 2025 UFL season. However, things haven't gone exactly according to plan for the market on the business side of things. The Stallions saw a dip in attendance during the 2025 season, which was the accumulation of a few things. Poor scheduling, bad weather, and a lack of true local presence burned a market that was once the crown jewel of the USFL. Sadly, the excellent product on the field didn't result in an uptick in fan engagement. Birmingham averaged just 8,794 fans per game in 2025, down 14.3% from 2024. This includes Mother's Day game that saw less than 5,000 in the stands. With Protective Stadium becoming more difficult to work with, keep that in mind. These are the big things here. With Protective Stadium becoming more difficult to work with, and James Larsen was reporting also in a post on X that the biggest problem as well is that a lot of the UFL has burned their relationships with some of these venues due to like just overall being difficult trying to schedule games and stuff like that. I've heard Michigan, we'll talk about that here in a second, but that was a big issue with Ford Field and why they are moving the Panthers. Even though they had a successful year, it's making a little bit more sense. For example, Legion Field, which is even worse, is what they're saying. It's tough to find somewhere to play. Protective wasn't ideal due to its size, especially considering the low numbers in the stand. It wasn't a profitable operation. Going back to the USFL setup in 2022, where profits went directly to the BJCC on TV, it's just a venue that never looked full in the UFL outside of A.J. McCarron's return to Alabama in a Week 7 showdown in 2024. It's truly a shame because the Stallions faithful, who were actually faithful to the team, were some of the league's most passionate fans. And I don't disagree with that at all. I just don't think there was enough of them passionate fans to really do anything or to make them money, especially with how much some of these venues and the contracts were running the league, basically there was no upside or value or profit in those areas when it came to how much they were paying for the venue. Because, of course, the other thing is, too, despite the fact the issues with Ford Field during the conference championship games, there's a lot of issues that I've heard as well where they have to pay for all this stuff up front. they get like a refund back if they don't use it for playoffs or whatnot. And a lot of that became an issue. And the league wasn't really trusting of some of these venues either when they've backed out of initial conversation or like contracts that they had for other things to accommodate for other people. Like, for instance, Kendrick Lamar with the Michigan Panthers at Ford Field during the conference championship game. That's why they couldn't hold the game there. They kind of took Kendrick Lamar's booking over the UFL. A lot of things happened there. As for the Houston Roughnecks, Houston was there was definitely a problem when the UFL, no pun intended, when the UFL kicked off season 2 at the newly rebranded Space City Stadium. Panning the camera to a nearly empty crowd, we knew we were in for a rough campaign in the city. Sadly, the Roughnecks were a fan base that were taken advantage of by the UFL. After a 7-3 campaign in the XFL in 2023, Wade Phillips' squad was ripped away and replaced by CJ Johnson's Gamblers, who went a putrid 1-9 in 2024. Pair that up with the team playing in Rice Stadium, and the attendance dropped significantly. In 2025, things got even worse. At first glance, it seemed like operations were headed in the right direction when the league moved back to TDECU Stadium, aka Space City Stadium. However, the lack of marketing paired with the fans' feelings of being ripped off during the merger resulted in even worse turnouts. Houston had the worst attendance in the entire league per capita, 0.07%. Even in games that claimed to have 4,000 stands, counting heads, it clearly was less than 1,000. It's sad because in 2020 and even in 2023, Houston was a strong market for the XFL. The front office in Houston severely underperformed, which has accumulated in the city losing its team. Memphis Showboats. Unfortunately, the writing felt like it was on the wall with the Memphis Showboats. Over the past 2 years in the UFL, their attendance saw a strong decline compared to where they were in the USFL when the Bandits were relocated to Memphis. The Showboats' demise was a mixed bag. It's partially the league's fault for not listening to the city's request. Memphis is a night crowd with a majority of their college football games held between 6 and 7 p.m. on Saturdays. What did the Showboats get? Primarily games at 11 a.m. in the morning or early in the afternoon. The result, the worst attendance we've seen in modern spring football history. At least with numbers being tracked, it's a shame we never saw a night home game in Memphis this past season, which is what the team was hoping for. Another factor, obviously, as we talked about last night, FedEx founder Fred Smith passed away earlier this year. Smith was key in bringing the franchise to Memphis in the first place and was the sole reason that the UFL remained in the market, leveraging his financial support, holding on to hope that he would eventually become a team owner. Between all of that, the Showboats featuring a league worst 4-16 record over the last 2 seasons, it was a sinking ship, no pun intended. Memphis being relocated is the least surprising move of the entire bunch. The market showed promise in 2023, but never reached those heights again. Mediocre branding and marketing, turnover in ticket sales department, and lack of true team identity destined this market for failure. With the Michigan Panthers, finally, the Michigan Panthers are also being relocated. This move is rather bizarre. It's truly the most surprising of the 4, even though they have no championships to boast about, unlike Birmingham. Of all 8 markets in the UFL in 2025, Michigan was the only market to show an increase in an average attendance, increasing by 43.6%, which we've talked about, but still crazy. This was largely due to the efforts of the new front office staff put in place during the offseason. The entire team worked their tails off to put the Panthers in the best possible position for success despite limited resources. Even though Michigan just showcased a championship appearance, the league is deciding to rip the Panthers away from Detroit market. The main factor in this is Ford Field. They are a difficult venue to work with, and with the UFL's issues on their end, the rough waters weren't smoothing out anytime soon. Ford Field cost the league a whopping $500,000 just to open the doors for game day. A $2.5 million investment per season, which is crazy to think, like absolutely crazy to think. Eastern Michigan University would be the only other option available, but with the complaints about the gray turf, it was something that never came to fruition with leadership in the UFL. James Larsen's final thoughts on this. It's sad to see the doors shutter on the entire USFL conference. Michigan and Birmingham are two of the league's best teams when organizations such as Houston showed legitimate promise heading towards 2026. Now, there is a couple things to take into account here. For one, these teams aren't disappearing entirely, as the staff/personnel from those organizations should be making the move to the new cities. With those allocations look like remain to be seen, but there should be some clarity on that end sooner than later. As the UFL heads towards 2026, the sun is setting on 4 of their markets, most of which we will probably never hear again from in this space. And it basically goes on to ask what everyone's overall thoughts on this were and whatnot. But again, it's one of these things that I completely understand where people are frustrated. They're not happy with anything here. And it really kind of puts into perspective exactly what what I've been talking about forever. You're going to lose a lot of fans when it comes to the fact that you're getting rid of any of these or relocating these essential teams. And I talked about how I felt that was something that the UFL did not need to do. And this is exactly what they did at this point. So it's sad that they are moving away from these locations or whatnot, but it's one of the things that the league feels that this is their best opportunity to potentially turn the UFL around and move into cities that are not, again, most of the cities were not in technically 2 of the 4 were not in NFL markets, but the 4 locations that have been mentioned to go into at this point are non-NFL locations. So, I mean, at that point, once you get down to it, with the 8 teams, depending if they do expansion, I think expansion is off the table for 2026 at this point. And they'll enter these 4 new markets to really test the waters to see if the league can even survive past 2026, and then maybe discuss actual expansion at that point. But the point being with this is they will now only have 2 teams, technically speaking, in NFL markets. That is or whatever they end up naming the Renegades, whether it's the Texas Renegades, the Dallas Renegades again, or if they do stick with Arlington. I feel from what I understand, they are not doing that. And it does remain to be seen if they stay at Choctaw Stadium as well, because that's another big part to this. If they move, like I've heard some rumors going around that they could go to the Toyota Stadium where the soccer team plays in, I believe it's in Frisco, Texas, all part of that whole Dallas area or whatnot. I think, was it Frisco or was it Dallas? Either way, someone will correct me in the comments. But in that realm, if they go there, that's a stadium that holds 25,000 people, 25,500 people. And to be honest, I think that could be a really good opportunity for them to do. Now, if they're going with the Texas Renegades route, again, I talked about that last night, that I think this is kind of more in a, not necessarily partnership, but something to kind of match what the Texas Rangers are, who are across the street from Choctaw, and going from there. But I think that's something that could help out, get the name brand out there. And I saw people saying, well, they're not the only team in Texas. They're still the Brahmas. And I'm like, yeah, and the Texas Rangers aren't the only team in Texas. There's the Houston Astros as well. So I'm not quite sure where that correlates with They can't be called Texas because of that. That makes absolutely no sense. The MLB has done it for many of years, and it's worked perfectly fine. So I think that if they were to move out of Arlington and go into like actual Dallas or Frisco or somewhere in those, I wouldn't say they're 100% out of a NFL market, because people still travel to Arlington to Jerry World for Cowboys and stuff, but it'd be a step in the right direction and kind of easing a little away from there. There is additional reports coming out from James Larsen that if Boise, Idaho does not come to fruition, playing at the Boise Broncos Stadium at Alberts, I believe it's Albertson Stadium, where the Broncos play, that potentially Oklahoma or Tulsa could be an actual city part of this relocation, which would be very interesting in that realm. They could easily just move the Roughnecks there and actually call them the Roughnecks, being in Oklahoma. It makes sense, and just kind of rebrand the color scheme and things like that. But again, you guys have been making tons of comments. We got so many subscribers overnight. I can't appreciate y'all enough. We are keeping an eye on this. This is not going to be the only video that's posted today. We do fully expect more information to come out today, especially from James Larsen. We'll be waiting to see if the league makes any noise at all today. I know there's that event in Birmingham for youth football, like things that supposedly Skip Holtz and Birmingham Stallions coaching staff supposed to be at, and it's at Legion Stadium, which this kind of starts seeing some issues with that. Makes me wonder what is happening there, or if that event even happens at this point. We'll follow along all the news, the drama, and everything unfolding here in the league. And we'll get your opinions here on the channel by the end of the week. I think Friday, I plan on doing a hot take video of everybody's hot take on this and what their overall feeling is. A lot of USFL diehard fans are pissed. They're not happy with this. I completely get it. It is at this point what it is. We'll see where this all goes. But let me know in the comments what you think about the why behind the UFL relocating 4 of its franchises. Have a great one, everyone. Thank you again. See ya on the flip side.